Hi there, this video is for people with tight calves in particular. That was what was requested, but just so happened that I was working with a young lady who was describing about 15 minutes after I went over to make an adjustment, and I noticed that her calves were just like really tight. Uh, and I've been working with her for about over a year now, so I can notice these things. And she said, yeah, my calves have been tight. So I asked her about her stretching and this and that, and admittedly not too much more before workout than after, and that's not the most favorable time. But then she started telling me as I did a little Thai massage work on her feet that the bottoms of her feet will be aggravated every now and again. It'll hurt a little bit closer to the heel, and I was like, ooh. So there's the connection right there. So tight calves is actually a really good way to start a discussion about potentially alleviating plantar fasciitis, weak hamstring tightness too, because just because you're tight doesn't mean you're strong, right? And then that loads into the low back. So I could do like an hour video on this, but I'm not going to go that far. What I was specifically asked to do is to address tight calves, but plantar fasciitis ties into this. So let's start from the feet up. Tennis ball, I was told by a couple of people now that lacrosse balls are awesome for this, but this is actually a chuck it ball from a pet, one of those things that you throw, you chuck it so that way you can scoop it up and you don't have to touch all the dog slobber on it. So we have a couple of those. These have not been in the mouth of a dog. I wouldn't be doing that. And just a simple exercise like this, you can do it sitting. You don't have to be standing at your desk or behind your register. If you're a teacher, somebody that works at a daycare, find time to do this. Because chances are you're squatting a lot if you work with small children, and you could be kind of overstretching the undersides of your feet. So plantar fasciitis can happen in people with really good plantar flexion like me, or people with, poor plantar flexion. Poor really is relevant, it's relative to the body. But if you have, for instance, this happens a lot like February, March, I've noticed, if you've suddenly taken on a New Year's resolution to do more working out, and that involves running and anything, even with low impact, you will find that some part of your body, especially if you really went into it gung-ho from going through a time of low work in December and November, your body will respond. And for some people, tendinitis occurs in certain things, like their wrists, for instance, if they start getting into training sessions where there's push-up and there's hand support work and they're not used to doing it. And for people that in particular tend to have tighter calves, you will also get the plantar fasciitis will pop up. And a lot of times people end up sort of curbing their exercise habits before it becomes too much of an issue. But let's work on how to avoid it becoming an issue, because this could happen not just from exercise. It could be overpronation of the feet, where more weight tends to be put on the inner foot. And every time you walk, your feet pronate a little bit. So if you have knock knees, that can be an issue. So if you have knock knees, the knees that go in like that, you may want to check. It might overstretch a little bit in the fascia under the feet. Tight calves are related, hamstrings as well, because they're all part of the same fascial line in the posterior body. So, since nothing in the body really works alone, find a particular tender spot like I just did. I'm going to stay here. And while you're doing this, you need to stay really calm. So if you don't do this a lot or ever, it's going to be like, oh, try not to get that response where you're automatically tensing here in your jaw. Try to, after that initial reaction, breathe into it, move the toes around on the ball, and take your time. You don't have to be rolling constantly. I see it all the time. We're this culture of people that have to be moving, and stop. Find the spot that is uncomfortable. If it's so much pain you can't possibly relax, then you need to back off. But uncomfortable spots need to be worked through. You notice that I'm not locking my leg out here. I'm trying to keep a good fluid line of energy from foot to pelvis, and this is where you start. And I think everybody should be doing this regardless of whether you have pain or not. Moxie agrees. She agrees. So that's one thing to do. The other one is what is often called broken toe pose. And this is a towel that I rolled up. My blankets happen to be in another vehicle that's not here right now. So not everybody's a yoga teacher and has Mexican blankets anyways. And not everybody has bunnies and dogs invading their personal space either. So just kind of learn to deal with it. So taking your towel roll behind your knees as close to the creases as possible. Now everybody has different knee makeup and amounts of flesh. So what you may need to do is come forward, way forward, and even have like your head on your dog, which I can't do, or head into the wall or something so you can pull this and then come back. So be careful about that. So first I would start with non-broken toe because we're addressing the calves right now. But in order to get into it, you're going to have more stability with your toes curled under. And this could be super just uncomfortable, like crazy uncomfortable. And, you know, bunnies could jump into things and create scary dogs. So don't stay here too long, you know. Lean forward onto your dog if it's too much. Blocks, or I always like having a couch or something handy. I think it's good for you to have something nearby. And then as time goes on, you may want to wiggle a little bit side to side. Now this is going to give you more discomfort in one area but less in the other. And you get to toggle between, oh gosh, that hurts. Oh, that hurts. Oh. Okay, so just be careful. It's not supposed to be so painful, again, that you can't relax and have a more tranquil countenance. And keep moving it down, like millimeters at a time. And if millimeters is too much, just do inches. Try not to go into more than inches. And you're going to feel different things. But the really nice thing is if you do this regularly, you're going to feel a difference very quickly. This is, I feel, one of those things where you start to feel, oh, I'm healing already. It's a very fast process for most people. So that's nice that there can be fast results sometimes. Other times there may not be. And then just keep going. I'm not going to stay here too long. I would stay longer if this was me because I'm feeling a little extra something. This is also really good to do, in my opinion, if you're sick or you feel like you're fighting something off because you have large clumps of lymph in your calves. So when your calves are tight, you're going to have circulation issues of your fluids. Okay? And that includes not just blood, that includes your lymph fluids. So anyways, that was really good. Yay, I wish I could have done more. Now, I'm going to curl my toes, not kick a bunny. So blocks, again, not everybody has blocks. But this is a good way to start your broken toe pose. Don't actually break your toes, though, please. So you can see that my toes curl under. I've got all my toes touching to a degree. Again, I have really good plantar flexion. I was just kind of born that way. It's not something I, developed. Just like you might have really good dorsiflexion. You might be able to go the other way. So it's okay if you don't. Here's the thing, though. If you're like, this is too much, I can barely, my toes are hovering off the floor. Apparently, my dog does not like plantar flexion at all. She just backed away from that real fast. Take your knees on something to elevate it so you can get more of the meaty part of your feet. Also, if your knees don't like to flex like this, and mine teeter back and forth, then you take something back underneath it to reduce the flexion. Some people won't be able to kneel, and that's fine. We have other ways to get your feet going from there. There are times when stretching in this manner actually aggravates the plantar fasciitis. So anything that hurts, I recommend you stop. It's one of those things that you really have to stop aggravating. In my opinion, from working with gymnasts and runners, that you can't just do a little bit. Gymnasts, they do heal quicker because they're kids. So you can get a little bit of play out of them. But let's say for a kid that has severe pain, sometimes that turns into severs too, which is a whole different other thing that really only pops up when you're a kid and you're involved in high-level sports, really intense sports. But it's not something that you can just say, oh, work through it or it'll get better. You do have to take a break. And for adults, guess what? We don't heal as fast. I know. I'm sorry to break it to you. I learned that the hard way. And what might feel really good for you, like your healing, might be sitting like this. And then pressing your toenails into the ground like you're trying to get rid of a really bad manicure. And then you're kind of curling the toes under. And then pressing and go between the two. As you curl the toes, like you're trying to lift them off the floor. That can help too. You're going to have to figure out what works for you because it's a little bit different for everybody. But if, let's say, you were dealing with somebody with an injury, you know, when they were a runner, maybe different shoes. And when they're not running, are they wearing good shoes? You know, some people say walking barefoot isn't good, and for some people that may be true. So let's go flex and point and make circles. So there's this thing we used to make the little kids do in gymnastics, and it used to be kind of fun. We would tell them to write the alphabet with their feet. So their feet would be together most of the time, but I think that's harder to do it with your feet apart because then your feet have to work in tandem, not touching. You can have your feet together. I just have my notebook here. Okay, so I'm going to turn them in a little bit and turn them out. And think about just turning your feet and notice what your legs do in response to your feet. So we're going to turn the inner edges of the feet towards your upper thighs. That's called your supination, and then your overpronation would be if your inner edges of your feet tend to be more gravitationally loving the floor, right? And the outer edges are lighter. You can usually tell by your shoes too, right? I can see people's shoes right away as soon as they take them off. A lot of times, especially with sneakers, who has what going on in their feet, even if the feet don't automatically show. And then how you walk is important too. So we're going to go over that. Just play around with the feet, make things move, shake them around. Right. All right, so a good calf stretch to do is that nice typical calf stretch that you may have done in high school track or basketball. And you just press down here. Again, stretching isn't always the correct therapy, but I find more often than not that it actually is what helps. That's just my experience. On the other end of things, if the stretching makes it worse, what do? You can work different exercises where you're pointing your toes and just doing a little lift, a little bit here, but this is a good way to stretch your calves. Again, we're working more with calves here than the plantar fasciitis, so just be aware. So stretching your calves here, pretty normal stuff. I don't recommend that you lock out the legs all the way until you get a good slightly bent leg, and then maybe the leg straightens, right? Another way to do this is blocks or anything, anything like a sidewalk. Do this on your sidewalk. Now, if you lock the leg out entirely, what you're going to do is you're going to lose a lot of the connection, so you got to bend the knee a little. And as you bend the knee, you're actually going to find that this muscle here, your shin, you like your peroneals, and then there's like soleus muscle, and then your anterior tibialis. Anywho, those muscles are going to contract. So if there's any way to get those muscles to be stronger, this is it. If you have shin splints, probably not the best thing for you. And then another thing to do is come up to a wall so you have support. You gotta have a little bend in the knee and then sit up tall. Now I feel it in the back, in the connective, but not too bad. You don't want to feel it behind the knee. I don't recommend that. When you bend the knee, less or more, the stretch travels. Okay, so you decide. And if your feet don't go down this low and your heel's hovering, as long as you're okay with it, like spread your fingers apart in your shoe or barefoot, whatever you're doing, and really press evenly between the pinky ball and the big toe ball. So that way if your heel's hovering, you have something grounding. Okay, do it with the other side. I guess I'll do it. Why not? And then over time, you may find that you get more feedback in the hamstrings too. All right, I don't have my strap out here, but not everybody has a strap, so maybe you have a belt, maybe you don't. You can do this. You can take it where you've got, again, if you don't have the flexibility for this, a belt is going to hang lower. I'm trying to do this like the non-yoga teacher style. You press into the block. That doesn't work. Guess what? You've got walls, I hope, in your house. It's okay if you don't have a block. The reason I use the block is because there's a little give to it. And so you can make little impressions. Oh, I've got a little pillow, look. And you can make little impressions in the block. And also the block moves, right? So especially if you're a guy and your feet's bigger, you're going to notice right away, oh, the block just collapsed this way. Ooh, that's not good. Or just collapse this way. So, and then what I'll do is I'll take the other foot not on the block, and then I'll pretend like I'm walking. And essentially what happens is this foot starts to give you feedback on how you're walking a little bit. So you notice how one hip goes up, right? And then even wiggle the hips, they'll get a little sassy. And this foot tends to give you the feedback on what it does when you're walking. I mean, you can walk too, but there's only so much you can get. I mean, feedback during your own walking, which you do every day. All right, so one more thing we're going to do here is we're going to work up the chain to the hamstrings. So I'm going to give you a little trick I learned a couple years ago. I cannot stress enough how much insisting that most of you do not need to have elevation in your seat in order to have a good support in your spine. So listen, I'm going to be honest with you. If you're a guy and you don't do a lot of stretching and you don't have that naturally, elasticity in your collagen, you probably need to sit up here. It's the vast majority. What I do is I just sit up here anyways for class, because most people, they see you sitting flat. They're going to sit flat even if you say, please elevate the hips if your lumbar spine pops up, if you have a posterior pelvic tilt, blah, blah, blah. So just sit on something. It doesn't have to be this. So you want to have the sit bones, because you might even be looking for a slight anterior tilt of the pelvis, maybe. That really depends on who you are. But what I like to go with is neutral. Neutral is pretty much safe for just about everyone. And then don't go all the way forward. Notice that you want to lengthen, right? You could do this. That's not really stretching anything. So I'm going to give a little lift of the pelvic floor. So no, you're not like trying to squeeze something. You're not trying to get too hard. You just want to activate through here. So if I say lift the pelvic floor and your glutes get tight, that's not what you're looking for. You're looking for something more subtle, maybe something that you don't even know exists yet. So my legs are straight because I can do that. Let's start here. I think this is a good place to start. Now, wherever you are, doesn't matter where you are, just come down to a position where you can relax and notice what's stretching. So I'm going to take the blocks out so I can notice what's stretching. All right, so I feel the back of my right hamstring stretching. So go ahead, go into your self-inquiry. What's stretching right now? Make sure you can breathe. I don't feel much stretching elsewhere. Okay, now that stretching went away a little bit. And I'm not going to my maximum, so please do not go to your maximum off the bat. That's just going to send signals to your brain to contract, and your muscles will start contracting. All right, so from here, let's get our bunnies on. So where your skull starts to meet your neck, you'll probably find it. Most people don't have a problem finding it. It's this little spot. You start to feel a little bony protrusion. Please don't eat my pants, Mr. Bigglesworth. I just fed you all sorts of tasty, delicious food. And then press a little bit, have your arms out like winging. press a little bit into the back of your fingers, but not so much that you're creating all this crazy tension. And then come down a little bit. Take a breath in. As you exhale, lengthen the crown of your head forward and press a little bit into the fingers. Not a ton. We're looking for the little itty-bitty movements. And then come forward a little bit. And then exhale, lift the belly and press. And just do that a couple times. For me, I'm going to do it about 5 or 6 because I have a little more range of motion to work with. And then lift the belly as you press into the back skull. Think about your soft palate, the roof of your mouth kind of area. Relaxing, lifting forward. Now check and see, after you do this a few times, what you feel stretching. See if it has shifted. You can come down when you're ready. See if anything has shifted at all. I feel muscles on the sides of my back now are actually, so I'm getting a whole chain from my dorsiflexed feet. I'm feeling a little bit in the calves. Again, I'm pretty flexible, so this is going to differ. I feel it back here. And after doing that, now I feel a little nice opening, very subtle opening here, a little bit there. So it's going all the way around. It's coming all the way up here. And now my head doesn't feel as heavy either, which is a great thing. And I can go further. So take a nice inhale here. Feel the backs of your ribs broaden from side to side. And then exhale, use a little lift of the low belly, not the butt, low belly. And then come on up. Inhale. And check that out. Now, if you're going to do this video and you're going to commit to it or to something, some of the things in it, I recommend changing up the routine. So starting from the feet up kind of makes sense, but at the same time, your body can get used to things. So feel free to switch around the routine. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to cure anything that you have going on, but this is basic techniques that are often given in physical therapy or any type of therapeutic modality out there. And I can tell you from experience that a lot of this stuff really does work. But what really works the most is tuning into your body and saying, you know what, I do have to stop running or doing impact for a month or whatever it is, and just be okay with that, because your body is the only one you have. So if all you're doing is just pushing, and you think that you need to work through pain to keep up some sort of body image, then try to look and see what you're going for. Are you going for a body that you can use for the rest of your life? Or do you want to be those people that walk into classes in their 40s and 50s and have a litany of chronic injuries? Do you want to be that person? Is it worth it? There's so many ways to work your body. So if you're one of those people that's antsy and you want to work and you got to move and what you've been doing isn't working for you, there's so many options. I assure you there's a lot of options. And yoga happens to be my favorite because I can heal myself and strengthen myself at the same time. So hopefully this video will help you do the same. Thank you.